Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi, older sister and fantasy lore nerd.
And I'm Nicole, younger sister and romantic at heart.
Today we are doing an Ask Us Anything bonus episode where we answer questions submitted by this incredible community.
Last week, we wrapped up our Kindred's Curse saga coverage. And next week, we begin the deep dive into Quicksilver by Callie Hart. So during this time in between books, we wanted to do an AMA with you all because it's been a while, like 2 years since we've done one of these on the podcast. A while.
Before we get started, quick heads up that this episode has no plot spoilers for any book that we have covered on the show. We will discuss general vibes, themes, and characters, but we are not going to share any big story spoilers today.
So if you want to go into those books, Empyrean, ACOTAR, and the Kindred's Curse saga, completely blind, then maybe this episode is not for you. We will still be here when you're done. But if you don't mind hearing about characters who you have no clue who they are, or if you're up to date on books from the show, hooray! This is going to be a lot of fun.
Next, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
I have no clue the kind of shenanigans we're going to get into today, but we are coming off of Chapter 72 of Heat of the Everflame, so I'm still on a roll! So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Additionally, we are so excited to see you at upcoming live events like Romantasy BookCon in Orlando, Florida, October 23rd through 25th, where we are interviewing Rebecca Yarros again at Disney World. Then on March 6th through 8th in Dallas, Texas, we will be podcast partners at Dreamers and Readers Festival.
Check out our website or the links below for more information to all of these events, and keep your eyes peeled because we may be introducing a few more 2025 events in the next few weeks.
Last thing before we jump into this fun bonus episode, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and want more events, more content, more community, and so much more all around, please check out Fantasy Fan Club.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join. And yes, the new names are here. Number 1, the Hive Mind, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and myself, book club, exclusive author interviews, community events, promo codes for live events, plus 20% off and access to exclusive merch. That is all for $6 a month. You can also join the Spice Watchers, which includes everything from the Hive Mind level, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That is for $10 a month. And last but not least, we have the Feral Fans, which includes everything from the previous 2 tiers, plus more behind-the-scenes content, a welcome gift, giveaways, private Discord channel called The Dining Room, and your name shouted out on the podcast. That is for $25 a month.
Join the party at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. The link is also in the show notes. And really and truly, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you for supporting Nicole and I and all of us here at Fantasy Fangirls as we have turned this podcast into a dream come true. It is literally all because of you.
And now it is time to answer your burning questions.
So let's kick off this AMA with a question from Kirsha. How does it feel to know that 2 years have already gone by?
It's so funny because it both feels like these 2 years flew and, simultaneously FFG has been our lives all along.
Yes.
Which makes it really hard to put into words how it feels. When we started FFG, we never could have imagined what this turned into at all. And I feel like we're just getting started still. We were just 2 sisters who wanted a deep dive podcast to deep dive things to the nth degree. And we couldn't really find it for the books that we wanted, like Fourth Wing or something like that. So we decided to make it ourselves. We didn't know anyone would listen. We actually only expected 20 downloads the first week. And we just had an idea and went with it. Simultaneously, almost overnight, and also over 2 years, our lives completely changed. It's this feeling of, holy shit, look what we've created, and a bone-deep feeling that this is always what it was supposed to be all along.
That's so perfectly said. I can't imagine life without Fantasy Fangirls anymore.
Me neither.
And I look back at photos or journal entries and all these pre-FFG memories, and it's like, wow, that felt like another life. On one hand, I'm like, has it really only been 2 years? Life has drastically changed since we launched the podcast. And we are in disbelief of this amazing community that has grown, the friendships that have been made, and these out of this world opportunities that we've had over the past few years. And on the other hand, it still feels like this is only the beginning, like you're saying. In many ways, we're still gaining our footing. We're still figuring this all out as we do it, especially as the business continues evolving and growing. We have really big goals for what Fantasy Fangirls can become, and we're doing a lot of behind the scenes to make it happen. And sometimes I have to remind myself that we've only been doing this for 2 years, and it's okay to not have it all figured out, to not have it all, done yet. And that's both reassuring to my very perfectionist self and really exciting for my optimistic and ambitious side, right?
It's so funny hearing the not have it all done yet, because I feel so similar. And also when I actually when the logical part of my brain starts thinking about it, it's like, are we ever going to be quote unquote done? I don't think so. Knowing you and I, we're always going to be like, I love what we've created. This is so freaking amazing. And the next goal is over here. And it's this new glass ceiling that we can't wait to break through. Next question from Freya. What, in your opinion, is the most complex or interesting character you have enjoyed deep diving? I love this question. I'm just going to start spitting a bunch of them. First of all, I think DM, this might be recency bias, but I think she has to be up there. She's one of the most polarizing characters we've analyzed on the show. And to be honest, she was the one I had the most oh, I really see where you're coming from moments, despite the complexities of my agreement or disagreement with her. She and I'll say Feyre and Akamath were probably the FMCs who have taught me the most just by deep diving their characters.
I like what you're saying with that, with the taught you. Yeah. I agree with you about DM. She has been really fascinating to deep dive as we explore her balance of compassion and fight. I do think the most complex character journey we've analyzed, for me at least, is Nesta. Deep diving her arc was therapy for me.
Yeah.
Seriously, there were multiple recordings where I would be crying too hard to continue and we would have to pause. Holding Nesta accountable for her actions and still finding forgiveness and understanding was a challenge as we navigated her character. Not like a challenge to have to look and find it, but just a challenge to experience it alongside her, especially with the added pressure from the fandom. It's not like, the fandom purposely put this pressure on us, but we just know how polarizing Nesta is and how people have some very strong opinions about her. And we wanted to do her character analysis justice, whichever way people saw her.
I will say it was a lot easier to see things from her perspective than I thought. Okay. I thought it was going to be a little bit more having to jump over several hurdles, but it was a lot easier for me to put myself in her shoes and see where she was coming from. Again, even if I didn't agree with the way she took out the actions based on the feelings she was feeling. For the same reason, I'm actually going to put Elaine in here for one of the most complex characters that we've deep dived, because she was definitely, in my opinion, the most mysterious Archeron sister, given how little we get with her on the page thus far, especially compared to the other two. But she's actually probably the one who my opinion changed one of the most, given the 11-month ACOTAR deep dive. I feel like when I started with her, I was like, my potatoes not petunias roasting of her. And she grew on me in a way that made me really appreciate her character more and see why so many people do relate to her. If we're going complex, we can't talk about this without bringing up Henry. I think he's the number one most complex character we've talked about. But Lex, I'm actually going to have you speak to it because you have the most experience with him, just given Henry has.
So yes, he definitely was one of the more complex characters for sure. I really do see things from his POV, even if I don't necessarily agree with them. There is a huge difference between seeing and understanding someone's POV and agreeing with them. That is something that we really hold in high value here at FFG, to differentiate those. But I loved the challenge because it is so easy to read Henry and automatically associate him as a bad guy. Yeah. And Pin really does challenge her readers to not look at it so black and white. There's a lot more to his character and the oppressed mortals that he represents. So I genuinely appreciated accepting that challenge and putting myself in Henry's shoes and putting on my Henry hat, literally, because I felt like that was really necessary for the story's societal themes. And being able to explore so much more of that gray area, and someone who is very easily impressionable. Yeah. And that does not automatically make him a bad person, even if he does not do great things.
I'm going to put him in the same camp as Elaine, obviously for extremely different reasons. I strongly disliked him when we started the deep dive, especially when I was reading him for the first time. I was expecting myself to just I know Penn loves Henry. He's one of her favorite characters. I had not seen that side that made me really empathize with him yet. But now, after deep diving the books, I'm like, I fully believe he's going to get a redemption arc. I have a lot more sympathy for him in most scenarios. I should be very clear. There's a few I can't really get behind, even though I still see through his point of view. It's really hard to root for him in those moments. So whereas others, I was actually really surprised at how I was able to root for him in a way. Last one I want to bring up here is actually kind of a curveball. Dane. Dane is one I'd love to, I'll call it redo.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, especially Fourth Wing, we only knew Fourth Wing. We didn't have Iron Flame and Onyx Storm out yet. And it's where GFDD started. Like, it was not, I was so mean to him. And I'd love to redo his character analysis, specifically in the first book, because I feel like that's when we get him the most in that whole, like, the past versus the present differentiators. And I think it would be a really interesting deep dive of Fourth Wing, knowing what we know now, even just from a Dane perspective. Obviously, a million other perspectives too, but that one specifically.
Yeah, that would be a very different deep dive.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to question number 3 from Kara. If your podcast had a theme song for the upcoming year, so for 2026, what would it look like?
I thought about this so much. I love this question. And not to get too sappy, but I'm actually going to go, this is what it sounds like from K-pop Demon Hunters.
That's really funny you say that because I was going to go with Golden. Clearly, we both have had one certain soundtrack on repeat all summer.
Golden's a really good one too. I could totally see that. And not to get too much into the weed of things, but like I feel like year 1 of FFG was building that jet mid-flight. Like everything was go, go, go. And then year 2, everything got bigger and bigger and bigger, which is freaking amazing. And it's also been us trying to figure out how to continue that jet mid-flight go, go, go. And also make this a stable business where everything is not eat, sleep, breathe FFG.
Exactly. It's like it really was a sprint for that first year. And the second year, it has to be a marathon. We cannot keep going at sprint level here. And our wonderful community is like, hey, we don't want you to burn out. Can you please take care of yourselves here? We want this for the long term. And we really want that too for ourselves. So,
and I feel like that recalibration of what normal work looks like has been really, really hard. I know there's been moments for myself, and you've seen these firsthand. I've been both the best and the worst versions of myself in the past. I'll speak to it more in the past year, because that's really when like the holy shit, our lives are changing newness didn't necessarily wear off, but it became more of a normal day-to-day thing. And it was, oh my God, how do we do this while being present with our family, while living our life and taking breaks? And there were a few moments where I felt like if I didn't keep going at 150%, I'll speak for myself, but I think we feel very similarly. It felt like I was going to lose everything we'd worked so hard for.
Yeah.
And this beautiful community is so precious to us. And the fear of it slipping through our fingers was terrifying, because I felt like if we rested or slowed down, it was like inconceivable to me to believe that they'd still be here the next day, even though saying it out loud feels so stupid, like, and so wild and crazy. And now I wish I could say like, I've seen the light, or like I've had those moments where like everything's changed. And I will say, actually, therapy, like, not to plug therapy, but like huge plug for therapy right now, that has been a huge help in me learning how to make this that marathon, not a sprint. Yeah. And I'm slowly embracing these slower changes. Yesterday's a great example. I didn't sprint and work on the book or work on an outline that I could have. And instead, I laid in bed, I listened to a book, I colored because I wasn't feeling well. Now, I'm really excited, obviously, what comes in this next year. But I feel like the word of year 3 is really going to be balance. And shouts to you, DM. But there's elements of major vulnerability that come with embracing this fear of slowing down and finding that balance. And that's why I feel like this is what it sounds like is the song of year 3, at least for me. It also feels like it's about finding the beauty in the messy and finding this new pace and finding this new normal gas pedal that's not flooring it constantly. I feel like my head has just been so down and tunnel vision as these 2 years have flown by at lightning speed. And I really want to pause and enjoy what is happening a lot more so I can actually feel that gratitude on a day-to-day basis and let it fully sink in.
For really all the same reasons you said, that's why I immediately thought golden. And I'll add that as we really get our bearings as a business, as we find our confidence and our stride in this fantasy space, we, of course, have very big aspirations.
I feel like last year, like I'll call it still this year, like 2025 song was how it's done. Like it was very like, go, 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 run, run. Like it was so like trucking along to that beat of just like go, go, go. And now I love this idea of it's that mix of golden and this is what it sounds like. Oh, okay. We need a mashup of those two songs. Who can
I'm
create
sure
that?
it exists.
I'm sure it does somewhere. We need to find it.
All right. So the next question is from someone named Nicole. How has life changed for the better and worse since the start of the podcast? And to you, sister Nicole, I know we both have pretty much the same answer here. So I'm going to let you take the mic.
I'm going to start off with better because there's no one answer to this. It's literally better in every single sense of the word. Getting to do what we love, getting to hear how much the show impacts you all. We cannot express how much that means to us. Oh my God. Getting to work and laugh with my sister on a daily basis, even when I'm like, it's been 6 hours of recording and I'm sick of your face in the most respectful way possible. Getting to build out a team. Oh my God. And support them in doing what they love to do for a living. I'm getting chills thinking about how special and incredible that feels. And the high of finding theories is actually something we don't really talk about a lot. It is this like, I'm a genius feeling and like screaming about them on the show. Like it feels like my life previous to FFG was literally just waiting for this life that we have now. Not to get too like flowery language, but it almost feels like I was asleep or numb and just grabbing for something that would make me feel this alive. And like I got little hits of it, but it wasn't until FFG took off where it feels like every cell in my body said, this is what you were meant to do. So it's like, I don't know how to answer this question because it's just better is life now.
Yep. It says finding our purpose. That has really been that in life here. I know that, we've frequently referenced how when we started reading these fantasy books and particularly starting Fantasy Fangirls, this really has ignited a spark within both of us and what we have seen it ignite in other people too. That feeling in our identities, in our sense of community, in the sense of belonging. I think that's really what it comes down to is it comes down to this feeling of belonging and we have found our purpose in life. That is huge.
Insane.
Absolutely huge.
As for worse, I don't like the word worse here because it feels permanent and unchangeable, and I don't think it is. So I'm going to say instead challenge that we are realizing we have to overcome. And that's what I was saying earlier is balance. It's these 2 years have been freaking amazing, and it's also been so much and so much good. Don't get us wrong. But there is this element of whoa, oh my God, 16-hour workdays, expanding more offers to listeners and fan club members, keeping up with social media, creating content, updating merch, reading like crazy, both to keep on top of what's popular on the Instagram and the social medias, as well as reading for the show, traveling for events, writing 20,000 word outlines every single week, sometimes even twice a week. It's all stuff we freaking love. And it's just been a lot where simply there are not enough hours in the day. And so we're learning for sure how to delegate to our admin team, Peyton and Hayden. Shouts to those two because, oh my God, I truly don't know what we did. We've had Hayden since the beginning, thank goodness. But literally as things started growing like crazy, that's when we hired Peyton and brought her on. And I don't know what we did before Peyton. Like
we did not answer our emails. That's what happened.
We did not answer emails. I love her. Hiring on a social media manager, Kendra. She's been huge for helping us with our socials and it just feeling less overwhelming and less like a constant grind. That's been really helpful.
It feels like we're not constantly playing catch up in that way. It's like, there's always things to catch up with, but we used to be living in I felt a week behind with everything. And now it's like, I'm just like a day or two behind.
Exactly. Yes. I feel the same way. Hiring on a merch coordinator. Erin of Spare and Wild has cut out hours in my weeks, and merch looks so much better. It runs so much easier. She's fabulous at what she does because she's been doing this so well for so long. And then, of course, hiring on Brooke, our content researcher. We're going to discuss this more later, but like having her on has really helped with figuring out how to delegate those massive time sucks for us during the week. So we're really learning how to let things go, how to say that dreaded word we both don't use very often, which is no, and allowing something to be, I'll say, quote unquote, good enough without feeling like it has to be perfect, outstanding, the best thing we've ever created. Like, it's hard. It's really hard.
I looked at a slide deck and I didn't make one edit.
I know. I was so
You all, that's a huge deal. I wanted
huge.
to change the font, but that was my personal preference, and it was not worth my extra time to do that.
So proud of you. Oh my God.
All of this, especially when it comes to balance, has really been the most difficult part. For me in particular, I have 2 very young children, and so there is the added challenge of being a mom to my young kids and being present with my family while doing all of these things as well. It's really hard. Like, the hardest thing I've ever done, and something that I'm continuing to work on and improve on. I am definitely not perfect by any means. And so I'm figuring out time management and work priorities, and also focusing on my family and being the attentive mom that I want to be for my kids and the wife that my husband married. And it's a lot, and it's something that I am continually working on and absolutely doing better at, especially as we do start getting all of this help that is so worth it, so that I can have dinner with my family, that I can pick up my kids from school, that I can be mom, you know?
Yeah. All of these lessons are extremely tough to navigate, especially when we're also trying to find balance with our friends, our family, rest, like we've been discussing. And like you're saying, like, we're not perfect. Some days are vastly easier than others. But one of the things I'm really looking forward to is practice. I'm not going to say practice makes perfect by any means, but just like practicing this next year with this balance, because I think it's not only going to make a difference obviously in our own personal lives, but I do feel like some of the creativity that feels like it's been a little running on fumes, it's going to reignite that again for us, which I'm really excited.
So from Morgan D, what is the biggest lesson you've learned and are grateful to have learned since the beginning of FFG?
Spinning away from like the balance side of things, how to let things go on the internet, I think has been a big lesson.
The internet's mean, everybody.
There are some haters or bad reviews or negative DMs. And to be honest, depending on the day, sometimes it's really easy to let it roll off our shoulders. And sometimes I need to cry on the couch and let my husband hold me. Like, it really just depends.
Nicole knows if I looked, I'm not actually allowed to look in our YouTube or our threads. I'm not allowed in threads anymore. I'm not allowed in certain platforms.
And you know what? I notice a difference in how you show up and how you feel every day when you're not on them. But this is funny quote that was Taylor Swift on New Heights when she mentioned a metaphor we've literally been repeating to ourselves, and it is that your energy is expensive and not everyone can afford it. And the way that I take this is that when people are haters, it's almost like they're trying to knock it down a peg because for whatever reason, they're trying to haggle the price down in order to get our attention or take away our energy. And luxury items, like Taylor Swift referenced your energy being, they do not get haggled, so don't sell it away, especially when they will never appreciate what they're holding. And that really stuck with me.
Our energy is so much better well spent with the community that we have built. And yes, absolutely, accepting constructive feedback is always something that we want to do. And there is a huge difference between that and other things. So yes, this concept of how we expend our energy. And I'll also say, you know, previously we were talking more about, I'll say, like physical energy, about just not having enough hours in the day, but this is more about our emotional and mental energy. And it really is a lot of energy that goes with having a platform and community like this. That's been the biggest lesson for me and very impactful for life in general too. And it is one that like I've been saying, I've personally especially really struggled with. I'm such a people pleaser. I know Nicole is too. Me, it's hard to learn in real time where to put my energy, but it's also very necessary to literally stay afloat. And for me to not let my work energy bleed into my family life energy. I am actively learning how to balance my energies, and it feels really important in life in general with this mind over matter attitude. If there is something that somebody says that I'm about to start spiraling over, I don't want to take that energy to my children, because I only have so much time with my family when they are this young, and being a full-time business owner, and I always want to give my children the best version of myself, however you always can as a mom. And I don't like bringing that negative work energy into that. And so that is something I'm really trying to do better about there. Cindy asks us, what is the most satisfying thing that we have let go of since starting the podcast? Cindy also knows that she has been here since the beginning. Yay, OG fan.
Yay,
Thank
OG!
you so much.
I'll say for me, it's a tie. Because when we first started, I was editing the show. And then in the middle of ACOTAR, so like last summer, I released that task to our sanity manager, Hayden, and it was terrifying. Not because he didn't do a good job. He's much better than I am, in my opinion, because he does it in like half the time and it's great. But it was my baby, and giving that away was huge. But it was also like, holy shit, 8 to 14 hours of my week. Actually, I think the final episode of Fourth Wing took me 18 hours to edit, which was stupid because I was such a perfectionist. But suddenly all those hours are back in my calendar, and that was huge for me. So that was a very satisfying let go of. And then the second is Brooke with Outline. So I know we kind of talked about this earlier, but her taking over those sections of the pod have opened up hours during the week, and it's been so fun also to see her refine her skills in the outlines. That's been so cool to watch.
So to give you all a little bit of like behind the scenes, for me at least, when it comes to Fantasy Fangirls as a business, there are really two big aspects of it. Number one is the business side of things. That is the social media, community aspects, fan club, all of our sponsorships and partners and all of those things. And then we have the outline, and that is actually the weekly content. And that takes up as much as, if not more time than the other business stuff there. And so really it has been having like two jobs for each Nicole and I here. And so when we looked at, oh my gosh, we cannot keep working these crazy hours, the thing that we knew that we needed to find a way to cut back on were our outlines. And simply having shorter outlines was not exactly an option for us, at least as far as we felt. And so we were really fortunate to bring in Brooke, who has also been with us since the beginning as one of our moderators. She is very, very skilled with world building and research kind of things. That is her jam. And so she started helping us with each of our sections. And now what she really helps us out with is things that might be a little bit more straightforward from the book. So like downloads or the battle walkthroughs and things like that. She kind of puts the first draft of that all together, and then that helps Nicole and I be able to go in, and rather than starting from scratch, we're able to fill in the gaps, really fill in with our voices and all of that kind of stuff. And so even though Nicole and I are still doing the majority of the outlines with the analyzing and theories and all of that kind of stuff, to have someone be able to support us with that skeleton of building it every week is so vital for us. So now, instead of it being its own full-time job, it's still an absolute beast, but it is more manageable.
Yes,
it's a little more manageable, where I'm literally not working until 1:00 in the morning every single night. Like that's what it was before. And now it's 9:00 at night or 10:00 at night. Yay! So I will take the wins.
From Sonia, what are your respective book boyfriend rankings pre-starting the deep dives compared to now?
So I'll go first because my answer is so simple. As soon as I met Cassian in Akamath, he was my number one book boyfriend. And after a Silver Flames deep dive last winter, he soared even higher as my number one book boyfriend. I have not been introduced to another book boyfriend that even comes within a mile of him, as great as some of them are. Because of the deep dives, I do have a lot of appreciation for Zayden. He's in like my top 5. He's also a younger guy, though, for me. I need a little bit more maturity sometimes. Which is why, of course, I choose Cassian, right? No, it's the empathy there that he has that I love so much. I'll also say I love me some Khan from When the Moon Hatched. He's up there. I will be very curious where Kingfisher ranks after our Quicksilver and Brimstone deep dives, because there is something I love about this bad boy Kingfisher in the context of it being more of a dark romance. And I don't know where my opinion will take me on the deep dive.
I'm going to be very curious of that as well. I've thought about this more than a person should, but here's my cracks knuckles. Pre-deep dive, I'd really only read Fourth Wing and ACOTAR, so keep in mind that those were really those only two. So it went Rhys first, Xaden second. But then we deep dove ACOTAR, and Rhys burned real bright at the beginning and then less so towards the end. He got knocked down to 5th place. He's readjusted since. And by then, I'd also read Kindred's Curse Saga, When the Moon Hatched, Quicksilver, and several others. And so then Luther was soared to the top of my list. And he's still my number 1, but he's not quite as sky high as he used to be. There were some episodes in Heat of the Everflame that were tough for my boy. But I think, at least for me, he redeemed himself towards the end. In the meantime, though, I have also reread A Court of Mist and Fury, just on its own with none of the other ACOTAR books. And I remembered why Rhys was sky high my number 1. But then I also had read Serpent and the Wolf twice now, and I'm actually going to say Reed is really high up there too, which, okay, so let me see if I can do this. Luther and Rhys are tied for first now.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, things have changed. Rhys went from first, 5th, first.
It all depends on how recently you read Akamap.
Exactly.
It's okay.
So Luther and Rhys are tied for first. Reed is just a hair in second place solely because of the question he asks Fassa, which is, quote, what do you need to do to be okay? That is so Brett and I are reading that right now together, and that quote happened, and we paused the audiobook and just looked at each other, and I'm pretty sure he fell in love with Reed. I'm pretty sure we both have Reed as one of our number 1 book boyfriends. Nadir from Trial of the Sun Queen is 3rd. I love that man. Xaden is 4th, but I actually think him and Nadir can switch places. And then Kingfisher just barely beats out Khan for 5th. I think this is my ranking right now. I have the right to change my mind.
It's funny because I don't even try to rank the rest. I just have Cassian and then everybody else.
I think for me, Reed, Xaden, and Nadir are all so close. So I feel like they can kind of interchange. And then Kingfisher, I'm going to be curious where he ranks, if he's going to be higher after the deep dive, especially after Brimstone. Just knowing what we know, I won't get into deets just for spoiler's sake, but just knowing what we know from Callie, I'm actually going to be really curious if he actually jumps up a few places after Brimstone. From Gabby, what are the tropes that get you every single time and you're not ashamed of it? I love this question.
So I'll go with more of I'll call it my fantasy tropes first. I love a mentor and apprentice trope so much. Somebody coming into their power, training montages. Competition is high up there too, or a quest. I love a good quest.
How interesting.
How interesting that I love quests. And the Chosen One trope as well. I really gravitate toward that. On the more romantic side, One Bed at the Inn. Whew. I love that one so much. A True Enemies to Lovers. That's one of my favorites with the banter that we get.
Okay, so question. What do you qualify as a true enemies to lovers? Because I know some people think for instance, Fourth Wing is an enemies to lovers, but I think you and I both disagree that that's more forced proximity versus enemies to lovers.
Yes.
Yes.
True Enemies to Lovers, Serpent and the Wings of Night.
Okay. I might put ACOTAR in there. There's a lot of asterisks next to that. I would put ACOTAR as one of those.
Just give me the really good banter, I guess, is what I really care about.
Good.
And then just a little micro trope when she wears his shirt.
Oh, that's a good one.
In Serpent and the Wolf, how they do that a lot.
Exactly what I was thinking. Yes. For me, I didn't go with fantasy tropes. I just went with romance, so maybe I'll sprinkle some fantasy ones in here. Fake dating and arranged marriage is actually quickly becoming one of my top favorites. Maybe it's just because I've read Serpent and the Wolf so recently, but anytime one of those tropes comes up, it's I'm immediately locked in. Any type of forced proximity, so any enemies to lovers is a huge one, and that's kind of why fake dating and arranged marriage are so big. I love the bait and switch, especially when it actually surprises me, and I don't say that in so special. I say that more as there are certain elements that I now, having read so many romantasy books, I can kind of pick up on a little quicker. So I'm actually going to amend it. Like, even when it is, in my opinion, obvious or highly anticipated, I still don't mind it, because I find falling out of love with someone who isn't for you and simultaneously falling in love with someone who is for you just so real and so raw and an emotional human experience. But most of all, my forever tippity top of the list, miles above where like Cassian is for Lexi on her book boyfriend list, slow burn.
Yes.
Slow burn. Maybe not quite to the Heat of the Everflame level, but not far off. Like, make me work for it.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. That's my absolute favorite too.
Yes. Okay, on the fantasy side, mentor-mentee is a big one. Prophecy. I love a prophecy trope.
Those double meanings.
I love a double meaning.
Our next question is from Anonymous. If you could experience reading any book for the first time again, what book would you read?
I'm waiting for my answer to change, but to be quite honest, I think it's going to be the same thing it was 2 years ago, and that is A Court of Mist and Fury. I just remember reading ACOTAR and loving it. I know some people didn't love the first book. I personally enjoyed it a lot. But then I read Akamath, and that is what changed my life. I cried more times than I could ever count with Feyre and her journey. I did not see some of the major twists coming, especially at the end. I also read it, though, back when I hadn't read any other romantasy. So everything felt shiny and new and mind-blowing. So this question would also require me wiping out any knowledge I have in the romantasy genre out of my mind, so I don't pick up on things that I do think I would have picked up on now that I've read so much. I also have to throw in all the Empyrean books because of just what they mean to me. Like Fourth Wing, reading the ending was one of the most shocked moments. I remember I was sitting out on my balcony and I was reading on my book and like sat up, like my heart stopped beating. It was so great. Reading Iron Flame in one night was a very special moment, because that's like right when Fantasy Fangirls happened. I feel like all of the bets and the theories that we had were either confirmed or denied, and that was just so insane. And then, of course, Onyx Storm is probably my most special first read experience, because it was with you in a hotel room. It was in one day, pausing to talk about theories, most of which I actually have filmed, and they're so funny.
So much of that content has never seen the light of day yet. We still need to post it one of these days, of us like delirious at like 4 o'clock in the morning, just spitballing.
Well, there's some that like are wildly on. Like there's a few towards the beginning, especially that we called like the end. And then there's some that are laughably so off that I just can't even believe it. So those are, I think, my top 2, I'll call it series, that I wish I could reread.
All of those for the exact same reasons. I'll also venture a little bit off the beaten path here and add in The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. It is one of my new all-time favorite books, and just so pure and just a big warm hug. I went into it without knowing anything about this book, and it was such a beautiful story. It was so unexpected for me, and my soul really needed that story there. So I would love to read that book again for the first time. And Gleam by Raven Kennedy. Wow, the FMC's character development is so incredible, and that ending is both heartbreaking and very satisfying for completely different reasons. I would love to relive reading that book for the first time. It's book 3 of the Plated Prisoner series, and now that I'm saying that, I also want to say Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole, and the second half of Heat of the Everflame with all those crazy twists and turns.
I have a feeling Burn is also going to be on our list when it does come out. Like, that's a book that I feel like I'm going to want to read again, because we have so many ideas as to what can happen. I could also put Empyrean 4 and ACOTAR 6 in the same category. But I'm so glad
Burn is going to emotionally destroy me, so we're gonna see if I will survive that first read.
We're gonna need like a hotel or an Airbnb with just like a really luscious, comfortable couch that you can just curl up in.
I told you so. Yes, we're gonna need a place that can just like soothe our heartbroken souls.
We'll need, like candles like all over the place. I'm so glad you brought up Plated Prisoner, because I feel like that's when I forget about, not because it's forgettable. It's so good. And that is one of my favorite character development journeys, like you've mentioned. That is such a good completed series also. Yeah. Next question from Cheryl. What two series would you love to see collide in a novella, and which characters would you throw into the mix? And I'm actually pairing this question with another one from Kayla. If you could put any characters together from any series to make new power couples, who would you pair together? Okay, starting with question one, we're like putting power couples out of the mix. Like, this is just anyone we'd love to see clash. I feel like one that's really popular online for a good reason is Carrion, Cassian, Riddick, and Taryn would just be hilarious. I feel like they would bond so hard, and then they would create a like yearly bro retreat after meeting because they'd want to be friends forever. I feel like Riddick would talk Iotrim into giving everyone a ride, which would probably lead to Carrion having sex with a dragon and what that would be like. Now, if we're picturing two characters that are like polar opposites, I would love to see how Luther and Kingfisher actually interacted with each other. Because I feel like Luther, Renfis, and Loris would all get along really well, but Luther and Kingfisher I don't see being
No.
no. But you know what my favorite pairing is? Halden and Nesta. Because
She would eat him for breakfast.
She would.
She would eat him for breakfast.
As for like actually good power couples and not just like my little chaos brain being like, mwah. I actually feel like Reese and Violet would get along really well. Like, they're both very cunning. They're both familiar with thrones. They always think ahead. I feel like that they would work really well. Ree and Moore, I could see being unstoppable. And I'm also going to throw in Bodhi and Lucian because they're always forgotten about. And they could bond over that.
There you go.
Next, for Lexi, this is from an anonymous submitter. I relate to your story so much. My oldest was born in 2021, and my second was born in 2024. My question is, how do you find the motivation to read after a day of being a mom? Any recommendations on how to get out of a book slump when you're in the trenches of motherhood? Oh, good question.
That's such a good question. And first of all, my heart goes out to all the mamas, especially when you are in the thick of it. So when it comes to finding the time to read, audiobooks have genuinely been a lifesaver for me with fitting it into my schedule. We would not be doing Fantasy Fangirls if we did not both rely very heavily on audiobooks. I love listening to audiobooks while I'm doing the dishes or folding laundry, walking, coloring in my app, and things along those lines. It's hard to fit audiobooks in during the day, like when I'm with the kids, because I do want to be present with them, and it can get very overstimulating with young children who really do need you as you're listening to a story. But really in moments outside of that, or if they are doing their independent play or something along those lines, like I really do find the moments to sneak in some reading with that. Specifically in regard to finding the motivation to read or get out of a book slump, I've actually been going through this myself lately. So first of all, I have to remind myself, and I have to actively and continually remind myself of this because I don't always think this way. It is okay for us to have seasons where we do not read as much as we have in the past. But it's also like this, we want to read, right? And that is where I turn to more lighthearted books to help myself feel excited to read again, or to help myself understand that it is okay with how I am turning my brain off in this way. I love cozy fantasies. They're like a gentle hug that sometimes I very much emotionally need, especially after long days with the kids where I need something super low stakes. I have already been overstimulated today. I do not need a high stakes fantasy book. I just need something nice and calm and a nice little hug there. I also have my guilty pleasure books that I don't necessarily read for the plot, but they are still a good time where I don't have to, again, really use my brain in that same way. A lot of myself finding motivation to read when I am really tired or overstimulated or whatever else is where I can just turn my brain off. And those guilty pleasure books and cozy fantasies are definitely it. I gotta bring up audiobooks again because they do help me read at night, because oftentimes, I don't have the motivation to read with my eyes, but I want to still have something playing where I can kind of still have that transition from a crazy busy day and to falling asleep. And so that is where I love to have an audiobook with an extra great narrator to really help me feel immersed in the story and and that can help keep my attention. On occasion too, I love to read in the bathtub or extra cozied up with a blanket and a glass of wine, something that's a little bit different that feels like a little bit of extra self-care for myself. It automatically makes me lean more into the story because I feel like I am treating myself. It's a little bit of more, I'll call it upfront effort to find myself in this cozy set position or to, run the bathwater or whatever that might be. But at the same time, it's like it's me giving myself a treat. And I literally think in my brain when I do start reading, I find that I am automatically more invested in what I am doing in that way because it's some time that I just specifically carved out for myself. So that's the best advice that I can give. And it is some advice that I'm having to listen for myself here too as well. So I wish you and all the other mamas especially, and anyone who is going through a reading slump, the absolute best as we hopefully can find our books again here soon. So we can hopefully feel like that extra exhilaration, that we do know that we get from reading here again.
Another mama question from Caitlin. What would you have told yourself when you first started FFG about what it would mean for you and your family to build this business?
So I want to first say that I really do feel that I have tapped into a new sense of myself, of self-identity outside of motherhood, thanks to reading Fantasy Fangirls and this community. And with that, I've become a more confident, grateful, passionate, and driven person as a whole. And I have previously felt some guilt for being so excited about finding myself outside of motherhood because I was very, very much wrapped up in my identity is motherhood and I'm going to be the best damn mom there ever was kind of thing. And I really realized that I am a better mother when I am able to have my own things here. And that was a big part of something that was missing previously. Now, as far as what this business in particular has meant for my family, everything, we were struggling before at Fantasy Fangirls. Without getting into the details, we were living with my parents. Jake was supporting us, and it was really hard for us to make ends meet. And I was trying to contribute with my freelancing and just trying to get my own grounding while still doing the motherhood things. And it was a very difficult time for us. And after Fantasy Fangirl started and really became something, we were able to move out, which in and of itself was a really, really big deal for our family. And last summer too, Jake was in a job that he was not crazy about at all. And so we were looking at what a career change would look like for him. And we also knew that we needed more help with the kids as I was continuing to work. And it was just a lot of balls up in the air, right? And we made the decision for him to become a stay-at-home dad. And that was really big for our family. For him now, for the past year, he is able to dedicate his time to being dad, and for me be able to work at home, like I'm able to jump in and out of all of those things. I really do love bringing my kids into my work environment and letting them play within reason, because it is a very expensive mic, but play within reason, like with my work things, and reading them stories and telling them all about the dragons and things like that. And I want them to have a very positive connotation with my work, right? Because they do see mommy working a lot. I would have told myself that this will take more energy and commitment and dedication than you ever thought, but it will also give back in more ways that you can't even imagine. And I'd also say to myself that your kids will grow up seeing you chase a dream and building a legacy and community and story to be proud of. And that matters so much. And I'd also say that it's okay and to give myself some grace to blur the lines. Because some days family will shape the business and other days the business will shape the family routines, and both can coexist, and there is balance within both of those. And last but not least, I would remind myself that it is okay not to be perfect, and just trying and continually trying to be the best, to have that self-awareness, to want to always be and to make those efforts is what matters most, and that is what's going to be seen by my family and by my business. The next question here is from Lauren. Can you both talk about your writing process for your upcoming books? I have an idea, but I don't know where to start, like when to seek a developmental editor, how to outline, etc.
So I can really only speak from my personal experience. I've never written a book before, so please, please, please take this with a grain of salt, because the truth is, with the podcast, we have had opportunities that other people do not get to skip ahead in. And I do not take that for granted. Oh my goodness. Like, for instance, we have agents through the podcast, and the agency also has a book department that we were able to easily move over to. So we didn't have to do the querying process. And again, was so fortunate, and we do not take that for granted. And we've shown our agents that we are willing to work just as hard as anyone who is having to do these processes. And it also has been very nice because she's been able to walk us through some of these elements that we just simply didn't know because we weren't in that side of this world. Again, speaking from my own experience, I came up with my world building and my magic system first. I felt like I really wanted to get that locked in, just at least the major foundations and like the different pivot points that were going to be discovered as you went through it. Some of that's changed, some of it hasn't. Then it was a little while actually later that I came up with my FMC, who then I inserted into the story. Basically, I asked myself, what's the worst type of person to be in the scenario of this world? And my people were born. Like, that's what happened. There's a reason that my developmental editor multiple times in like a few chapters, they'll say it like multiple times a chapter, be like, damn, or ooh, or how much worse can you make it for this girl? And I'm like, watch me. Then I spent a while building out the magic system even deeper with the FMC now inserted and the MMC, because I wanted to be really clear in the rules and the consequences of that world. I know that's something that we really like whenever the worlds do have those really clear magic systems and rules. Then I wrote the first chapter. And for about a year, I sat on that chapter, occasionally writing little bits and bobs. But for the most part, I actually just rewrote chapter 1 over and over and over again. I would not recommend doing this. Do not do what I did, because the constant edits, it was me being afraid to do the whole first draft thing. Like, that is entirely what it was. It was unknown. It was scary. I didn't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So at this time, I had a rough draft of the overall plot points for both the series, and I knew where I wanted book 1 to end. I actually knew where I wanted all the books to end. So that's all what happened for about a year. This is where I'm actually going to answer your question. Earlier this year, I think around May, this is when I was like, okay, I want to get serious about this. So on my whiteboard, I plotted out the whole first book. I wrote out every scene, every act, every emotional point, and this is when I hired my developmental editor. I found them through Lauren K. Wrights. I love them. They're amazing. They are the reason my book is written, in my opinion. They've really, really helped me. So I started writing about a scene per day, which is a lot. And then I sent that to my editor, about 30,000 words at a time, for them to edit and then give it back to me while I was working on the next 30,000 words. To be honest, I will not be doing this again. Like, that was writing a first draft in 80 days was great for the first book. I'm glad I did it in a very condensed time to keep me with that consistency. I will not be doing that again, just simply because it was just too much. It was just
I will
too
not
much.
let you do
I
that
know,
again. How about that be your reason? I say lovingly.
Again, I'm glad I did it for my first book. I would not recommend it. I will not be doing it again. So all of that to say, about a month after I had finished my final draft, I got the final round of edits from my developmental editor. So I now have the full first draft done and the full first draft developmentally edited. Now I went back to the very beginning of the book. I have to do it chronologically. That's just me. I know some people can jump around. That's not how I work. And I started doing these massive developmental revisions. And then about a chapter to 2 chapters at a time, I'm sending them to Lexi, as well as our friend Cassie, for them to start doing more particular editing. Originally, we were like, oh, it's beta reading. They're not doing beta reading. They are doing full-blown, it feels like, line edits now, which for me is great because I kind of needed that next. They're making sure they're highlighting any sections that have strange phrasing or grammar mishaps or stuff like that. Again, it's not normal for beta readers to be doing this much, but I'm really glad they are because it's helping me correct some bad habits as I'm simultaneously going back and editing their chapters that they've done, as well as continuing on and then giving them chapters as we go. So I'm doing a little bit of bouncing, but this is when normally people actually hire a developmental editor, is after they finish the first draft. For me, I wanted it a little bit more of a condensed timeline, so I did it simultaneously. All the while, I've given my agent now the first act, which is the first 5 chapters of the book, and she's actually shopping it to publishers, which is really exciting because now I get to go and finish the edits while that process gets started. And this is very, very, very rare for new authors. So again, please, please, please take this with a grain of salt, because normally you have to finish the book and then you start querying. Now, I don't know if this helped, to be quite honest, but as I've talked to other editors in my DMs or other developmental editors, they've all had a very common piece of advice. And that is, no matter when you hire a developmental editor, start writing a shitty first draft. Write a draft that is terrible. You know it's going to need a lot of edits. It's going to humble you so much, but just get it on paper. There are several chapters, actually, even in the first 2 chapters, that were scrapped entirely and rewritten, but I never would have known that was a direction I wanted to go if I hadn't gotten the shitty version down first. So as my editor says, we can edit flaming piles of garbage. We can't edit flaming piles of garbage that don't exist, though.
So I think this has been my most difficult part, which is just getting the first draft out, even knowing that it is a flaming pile of garbage. I am actively having to remind myself that it is okay that the first draft does not have to be good. So a little bit of my writing process here is that I am right now just shy of 20,000 words into my book. So not very far along, but it's starting to come along just a little bit here. And I've got a hodgepodge of a first draft of my first act, which is the first big inciting event of the book. And when I say a hodgepodge, it is literally like, I was saying this to Nicole earlier, it's like a bunch of different puzzle pieces. And I have like, a little like corner with a few pieces there. Okay, that looks good. And then I have another one nearby that it's like, oh, okay, like this look, I got a few pieces here together, but there's like a big gap in between them. And it's like, oh, but whatever. I'm just going to keep putting random puzzle pieces together. So I've had like little pieces of ideas brewing in my mind for a long time. And the most important thing any of us can do with taking something from an idea to a book is to start getting it out from our mind so we can keep building off of it. My favorite way of outlining is actually using mind maps for brainstorming. I have my big whiteboard for my mind mapping, but you can literally use a piece of paper and color code all these thoughts and plot points and random things that pop into our heads. These mind maps help me easily connect these ideas and color code them, and most importantly, write them down and visually see these ideas in front of me. I've done this for the whole story and then also for my main character, cultures and regions within the world, a historical event, chapters. The topic of the mind map can be as big or as small as we need. The only focus is to flesh it out, give a half-baked idea more legs to stand on. So then I transfer the mind map into docs and outlines for my book. So for instance, if it's something that is like more chapter focused, I write down what's going to happen in that chapter, but then inevitably in the mind map, I created a whole bunch of other little Easter eggs or like more history things, like lots of other stuff that is not even going to be in this chapter. So then I put those in their respective documents.
One of my favorite things is walking into your office one day and it was like Charlie's bulletin board with like all of these arrows and like all of these things.
Yeah.
And I was like, respectfully, how the fuck does this make sense in your mind? And that's one of the things I love. Like mine is literally laid out chronologically in color coded scenes with like, these are the different reason these scenes are existing in the book, and yours is just like all of these arrows pointing to different things, but it makes sense for each of our creative processes, and I love it. And I'm also a little scared of your whiteboard.
So as important as all of this is, something that I have learned for myself is that I get bogged down in the details of world building. I don't think anybody is going to be surprised to hear that, especially myself. I feel like I have to have all the answers before I even start writing the damn thing. And this is just for me. I had to check myself because I realized I was using my world building, my plot mapping, and character sheets as a procrastination tool because I can do that all day long, but none of it matters if I am not actually writing. So I have actually now paused with the ideas and the story developments and these half-baked world systems and all of this that I have, and I have started committing myself to just writing. When I was growing up, I used to write all the time. I was absolutely a fanfic writer back in the day, and I wrote so much, even as a teen and young adult. But now it's been so many years that I feel very stiff, and it's a lot of practice and letting myself be bad at it. It is so hard for me to look at a first draft and be like, oh my God, I don't like what I've written, when I know that I've written much better. And it's like, nope, it doesn't matter. You can just keep on going. So as I've actually paused with all the outlining and plotting and all of this other stuff, I am letting myself get to know my characters and my world through actual writing. And I know that there are big gaps or changes that I'll make or big lore things that it's like, that is only like 30% of what I want it to be. But it's all okay because going back and making changes is a hell of a lot more doable than having it all just exist in my brain. So as I finish writing Act 1 right now, I plan to very soon go back through and clean up this first draft so it's at least cohesive and I know I have what I want in there. This is not going to be like major editing by any means, but just cleaning up the spaghetti that I have thrown on the wall. Like, again, like I was saying earlier with the puzzle pieces, I'm starting to find like little gaps and putting the puzzle pieces actually together. And then I'll move on to Act 2 and probably do a similar process there. I have not gotten a developmental editor yet. I know I will at some point as I get closer to the middle of my story, and I know that I will need some more direction, help with brainstorming conflict and plot holes and such like that. But I want to have at least 50% of my story done before I start getting that additional help there.
Yeah.
And similar to Nicole, yes, we have the same agent, which is absolutely fantastic. And I am not even close to anything along those lines.
Well, and one thing that my editor and I are working on right now, because technically they've done their pass to the first book. So like the first book in their hands is quote unquote done. It is nowhere near actually done, but in their hands it is. And so now what we're doing is we're actually going through and really plotting out a lot more minutely, because we have the 5 acts of the next books in the series, but we want to make sure they're as crystal clear as possible so that as I'm doing these edits, I can go through and add little Easter eggs that aren't already there, because y'all, there's a lot of Easter eggs in this book. I'm so excited. Okay, I know we talked about this at Enchanticon, but I feel like it's unfair to not share it with listeners as well. Can we each share one trope that is in our books?
Yes.
You start.
Quest.
Competition.
Yeah,
buddy. I'm also going to say slow burn because I'm setting expectations, because so many people are like, Nicole, I can't wait for your sex scenes. They're going to be so hot. And I'm like, you're going to have to wait a little while. Sorry about it.
Yeah, I've got a slow burn in mine too.
That's true.
I'm just going to go ahead and throw out here that if you like National Treasure,
yes,
I think you might like my book.
Yes, I'm so excited.
I really hope I have not bitten off more than I can chew, but there you go.
No, if there's anyone who can do it, you can do it. I'm so fucking excited. From Jordan, while we're still on the topic of our books, how has FFG and the deep dives affected the writing process of your own books? Is it hard to keep the stories separate from what you're deep diving / reading? Also, what has surprised you the most of this process? I'm actually going to say it's been so helpful to deep dive and read as much as we do, so that I know what I want in my books and also what I don't care for or don't want to include in my story.
Yep. Absolute same here. I don't think it's affected me in a bad way so much of like getting mixed up with things. Now I do getting mixed up with books that I'm currently reading or something along those lines. I'm kind of purposefully trying to look at other stories and fantasy than what we particularly read right now as my inspiration and such. Yeah.
I'll say it's been, for deep dives, especially like whenever I think about the Empyrean series or something like that, it's been wildly helpful in figuring out how to plant Easter eggs in a half a sentence that you would just read over, but is wildly important for later on in the book or the series. That's been really fun to play with, and I don't think I'd be as good at that if there was no deep dives, like at 100%. It's not even negative. I'll say like negative adjacent. There has been this voice in my ear that my developmental editor has lovingly called me out on every session. That's almost like, did they do that in ACOTAR? Or, this really sounds like Fourth Wing. Or, oh dear, they're going to think this is insert character from deep dive book here. And that's been really freaking hard to quiet down in my head, because the truth is there's going to be crossover of tropes because it's a romantasy book. Like, that's exactly what it is. Like I just mentioned, mine's a slow burn, but I don't want people to think I'm copying pen or getting mad because it's not Fourth Wing or stuff like that. Because the truth is, I chose it to be a slow burn because that's what felt natural to the characters in my story. And actually, I didn't even decide it until I was starting the 5th act of my book, when I actively was like, no, this has to be a slow burn because that's just the pace that they're going at. At the end of the day, I keep on having to actively remind myself, or have my developmental editor remind me, this is my story, which, yes, of course, has familiar tropes from other books because I love them. But also I'm writing a unique spin on them where it doesn't, in my opinion, hopefully, take you out of the story where it's like, oh my God, I remember that in X book here.
I think too, because we have such analytical brains with our deep dives and things like that, it is also, I know for myself, when I am editing your book or doing my beta reading, whatever we want to call it
Major
here,
air quotes there.
I absolutely have my deep diver hat on when I'm editing.
Which I want.
Yes, exactly. So yes, it's helpful as I'm writing, but actually for me being in the first draft right now, it's not helpful because I just need to get a shitty first draft out. And I'm like, I would never deep dive this right here. It's like, that's okay. This is the first draft. You don't have to deep dive this, which we wouldn't deep dive our own books, but you know what I mean?
No.
But then I see Nicole's, which it has gone through more of those edits, and I am continuing to do that. That is where I really think that it has become very beneficial because I also, with my like lore and all of that kind of stuff, I wouldn't say like poking holes, but like I'm asking Nicole for a
You're
little bit
asking
more
questions.
here. Exactly. I'm asking the questions. And sometimes she's like ignores it because it's like, I will explain that soon enough. But then other times it's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Like a great example is, no plot spoilers, there's a rug in chapter 2 that you were like, can we make this so that it tells something about the scenery or the character or the lore? And I expanded on it, and now it tells you something about a character where you're like, you know what type of character this is based on how the rug is described. And it's like, that's why you were the person, you and Cassie specifically are the perfect match for this. It's because it's like, you have the deep dive brain on, whereas Cassie has more of that like neutral reader brain.
Like the vibes reader.
The vibe reader.
Yeah.
She's like an analytical vibe reader, which is exactly what I want. So sometimes you guys will ask me questions and I'm like, sucks to suck, Squirrely Scouts. You're not going to know that until chapter 30, like stuff like that, which
but
is so
you're
fun.
happy because it's like, oh, good. They are asking these questions.
They're already thinking about this.
Exactly.
Exactly. Which is so fun as a writer.
Or like there have been other moments too where it's like, I know that I've been like, oh, like my deep dive brain, it's like I start guessing what's about to happen. And I know that there was one thing in particular that you kind of had to tweak because it was like, oh, can't make it that obvious.
Exactly.
Or something along those lines.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because I'm really hoping that the ending will not be able to be guessed. And if you can't guess it, that makes me feel really good. So the second part of this question, what surprises us the most about this process? I'm actually going to say something I don't normally say, and that is how flippin' proud I am of myself for solidifying my writing skills, for finding my voice, like without getting too much into like my sorrowful backstory. Like I was held back in classes like spelling and English. I was made fun of and bullied for being, quote, not smart. I had really negative connotations with my own intelligence when it came to writing and analysis and stuff like that. And so finding my own voice, finishing a 100,000 word first draft was like, I remember so vividly looking at the document and just like, like breathing. That was insane. Like, the first draft is just so half-baked. Like, it's so, I don't want to say bad. It's shitty. It's just a shitty first draft. And now going back and, like, really seeing a story come through is something that there's no words for how prideful I am of myself. We were talking earlier about, like, reading simultaneously and how it helps or doesn't help. I've actually found that reading contemporary romance has really helped me find my own voice and build my story out because those are so character driven. And I feel like just because of what we do, like the plot, the world, the fantasy, it just comes a lot more naturally. But like these dense characters, I want to make them as strong as possible. And that's actually been a really big surprise moment. Like I was not expecting Emily Henry to be such a huge writing inspiration for me. I'm also really surprised at how dark the story is. Like without getting into details, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people that the setting and the topics came out of my brain. I don't know what else to say on that. But
that too. Yeah, it is surprising, and it's like, all right,
this is fucked up.
It's really fucked up.
But I'm also excited because, like, it is for this person who's going through this. It's what I said earlier. Like, what is the worst type of person who can be in this scenario? And here it is. Like, and she's doing her best. I can't really say anything more on that without giving major spoilers, but yeah, that's my surprise. What surprised you? Oh, go for it. Sorry.
I just want to say like how proud I am of you too, Nicole. Like you all, I know how daunting and how much of a struggle this was for Nicole. And even since we started deep diving, I have seen a very noticeable difference in Nicole's outlining and how she approaches these deep dives. And I remember even, I think it was like later Fourth Wing or even early Iron Flame, that I made a comment to you and we kind of had a crying moment together because it was just like such a big deal.
Well, because you were always the AP English student. You really leaned into those, and I just always felt like I was too dumb to do those classes or be smart in this. And I'm not saying that and then like, oh, well, it's me. I'm saying that as like, that was real.
Yeah. And it's been so joyful for me as your sister, as your business partner, to see how much you have grown in your writing and how you look at stories and all of that kind of stuff. And so it has been so much fun to see all of that. I think for me, I just keep going back to this shitty first draft, you all. It is... Really?
I feel like
I
the
can't
ghost
do
on your
it.
shoulder. You can't do it.
No, I
can't
do it. But like, I'm literally looking at it as like, this is the worst first draft that anybody has ever written. This is not a good enough first draft. And then I literally showed it to Nicole, and she's like, "You bitch, this is what you've been worrying about."
I'm like, my first draft was like, he stared at wall, he opened eyes, like da da da. Like, it didn't even make sense. Sometimes I flipped between past and present tense, and you're like,
oh, I do that too with third or first person. It's gonna be a first person, but sometimes late at night I randomly write in third person. I don't know. Ask me this question in a few months, I think.
That's fair. That's so fair. And we know we've gotten this question a lot before. People are like, when are release dates? We have no idea. Like, I'm so sorry. We'll just go ahead and point blank. We have no idea.
I have less than 20,000 words written of the first draft, you all. Like,
I have a
wait
goal.
a few years.
I have a goal time, but it will entirely depend on powers that are outside of my control, to be honest. So yeah, I'm just going to get the book done as fast as I can in a way that doesn't make me hate my life like I did a little bit over the summer. So we're slowing down a little bit. Next from Bree, this is another one for Lexi, but I had to include it. How did it feel having your first dance on your 5-year anniversary? Can we tell the backstory first?
Yes, definitely. First of all, thank you so much for asking. So yes, this question is referring to the ball at the Dragon Gauntlet a few weeks ago in Michigan. It was over my husband Jake's and my 5-year wedding anniversary. So it was so wonderful for him to be able to join us on this trip and experience Boyne City and this amazing event put on by Rain and Revelry. So Rain and Revelry got Nicole in on this surprise where the DJ during the ball suddenly announced for Lexi and Jake to come up to the dance floor. And they started playing our first dance song, Thinking Out Loud. And once Jake and I were both finally up there and dancing, that's a whole other story. But yeah, one was when we were both up there and dancing, there was this huge circle of people. There were like 300 or so people in attendance. And we truly did get to recreate our first dance moment. And I just can't even begin to describe how special this experience was for both Jake and I, for a lot of reasons. We are in the trenches of parenthood and this business that is a jet plane. And you might be able to imagine how life in our household is kind of in survival mode. And for us to have this moment that celebrated us in the midst of this craziness, and for this community to literally be cheering us on the way that they did, I can't express how much that meant to me, to him, to us. So just to everybody who was present, who wished us a happy anniversary, who has sent their well wishes from afar, thank you from the bottom of my heart for welcoming Jake into this space and for giving our own love story a moment in the spotlight. That was really and truly a new core memory for us. I'll also add that Jake and I got married in 2020, and with the COVID restrictions, we of course had a very, very, very small wedding. And while our first dance was amazing and we were surrounded by our closest loved ones, I know you're all listening, I love you all, there was this extra specialness to getting to celebrate with hundreds of people in the way our wedding was originally planned. So I just feel very blessed for this life and very grateful for everyone in it. And especially Jake, who's right there by my side, and all of the things that he does to support this business and me behind the scenes. It's a lot. And for us to have that moment out in the spotlight, I just am, again, new core memory for me. So yeah, very special.
That was really special to watch. Even just like, I was weeping like a little sister. It was your wedding day. Actually, it was just the best. Oh my God.
We were like starting to like kiss because it's like you kind of forget that everybody else is there. And it's like, oh
I
my
started
gosh,
to whoop and a holler.
Literally hundreds of people as we're like starting to make out on the dance floor.
That was so fun. Oh my God. Next from Ava. I am the youngest and I have an older sister, so I want you to both answer this. If you had to assign a fantasy creature to haunt each other, who would you pick? I love this question.
To haunt each other? Oh my God. What a unique question, Ava. I love it.
I know it said creature, but I'm using that term very loosely. I want to say Henry, but only if he's in his full clown makeup or, oh, no, this is better. If he's wearing a Viking crown with 2 beers on it and he makes you drink the beers and then spills on your keyboard and every single day you have to either clean it up or or type with sticky keys.
Wow. I'm telling pen on you.
For those of you who don't know, during the Viking episode, and by that I mean literally just Lexi wore a Viking hat with 2 beers on it. She spilled some beer on her keyboard.
Because I had really never done one of those, like using a drinking
which
beer
really
hat
surprises
thing.
me.
I know, right? That's beside the point. And I did not realize how foamy it was.
So that would be my haunt. You would have to clean up a sticky keyboard or type with sticky keys every single day because of Henry.
I stuck to the question with the fantasy creatures. And I'm actually going to give 2 different answers. One that is mean and the other one that is funny and cute.
Okay.
So the one that would really and truly haunt you would be the Adder, our good old evil Bartok. But here's the catch. That he would have the stench of Claire Better clinging to him. And you would be haunted by the smell of Claire Better. You would never forget Claire. And this evil Bartok would be after you all the time.
That's good. That's really good.
And then if I didn't want you to be absolutely terrified and smelling a dead body for the rest of your life. So in Enchanted Greenhouse, one of my cozy fantasies, there is this cat with wings, and it's not a huge character, but I just love that this cat could haunt you, just because it would kind of get up to some silly little things and very mischievous.
It would make my husband all sneezy because he's
yes,
so
and it would like
cats.
that one little caveat of like, oh, like where are these allergies coming from? You know. So that would be my other answer.
Okay, that's good. That's really funny. Oh my God. All right, last question. This is from Anonymous. If you had to describe each other via a fantasy character, who would it be? Or a mix of characters? Okay, so I thought about this and I thought I was just going to originally go with Rhiannon. You are always the one that others can go to should something be wrong, and they either need someone to listen to them or they need someone to problem solve with them. And you have no problem being either person while simultaneously being that cheerleader and believing in them so deeply. So originally I was just going to go with Rhi, but then I'm actually going to pick that part out of Rhiannon and mix it with Nesta Archeron, because you've dealt with a lot in life. But like Nesta, you decided that never again would you let others dictate what you love. Never again would you let fear or overwhelm stop you from grabbing onto something that is so beautiful and changes your life. And never again would you doubt yourself and what you could create and how it would inspire other people into being able to believe in themselves too, especially in the throes of really hard chapters. And I feel like what you've created for yourself and what Nesta created for herself in 600 pages, I'm truly in awe of the way that you've changed your life. So,
Thank you.
Rhi and Nesta.
I love, that's a power duo right there.
Yeah,
Thank
right?
you so much.
It's you're a power duo.
I see. It's so funny. So I was actually thinking for you, there are 3 characters and it's different qualities in each of them. And one of them is Nesta. The other one is Diem, and the other one is Violet. And so I'll start with Nesta here, is for very similar reasons. And I think that's why you and I are such a great business partners in all of this, is because you kind of take this idea that if somebody says that you can't do something, you're going to go out and fucking do it. Like with aggression and determination, and it's a little scary, but in a good way. And so I really see that Nesta's determination. And I will also say this, and I say this in a very good way, that she doesn't take shit from people either. And that is something that I really do appreciate about you too, because I get a little bit more bogged down in that kind of stuff. And you are able to and again, I say this in a great way, disassociate from the emotional side of it and be like, okay, like this is what it is. And like, let's just keep moving on. We always got to keep going on. And that is something that I really, really admire about you. And then when it comes to DM, kind of similar things too with that, like, you're feisty. And at the end of the day, though, you're just a little snuggle bug, though.
I feel like I could kill you is a cinnamon roll a little bit.
Yes, yes. It's like, I could kill you, but I'm not going to because I don't feel like it. So in that way, too. And also in you think with your heart sometimes, very much so. And I do think that is also something that DM does there as well. And lastly is Violet. I know how you have had very much your own kind of coming into, I'll call it your smartness, but that's not the right way of saying it. It is you really finding your intelligence. And it might not be the usual, I'll say, school way of thinking. But with what we have here, it has really helped you flourish with all of that. And she is also a leader. And she is somebody who is not afraid to roll her hands up and get messy by any means. And that is absolutely something that you do too. And I really, really admire you with. And so you always have this learner's perspective, as well as always trying to be better for yourself too, and wanting to lift the people around you up there as well. So that's the three that I see you as.
I love you.
I love you so much. Oh, friends, thank you so much for sitting down and having this AMA with us today. This was such a special bonus episode, and we really appreciate you listening along and being here, asking these amazing questions, and just being part of this community. Thank you so much.
This felt like a nice little fireside chat. This was great.
I
loved this. We will see you again next Monday for Quicksilver Episode 1, baby. I'm so excited. We are covering chapters 1 through 7. Oh my God, I can't wait. I cannot wait.
And in case you missed it, episode 2 is going to be airing next Thursday. So 2 episodes in 1 week. Oh boy, everybody, we're so excited. And episode 2 is going to be covering chapters 8 through 14. We'd love to give the biggest warm welcome to our newest Feral fan members. Oh, that rolls off the tongue so nicely. Extra cherry on top for you for being our very first shout outs with the new tier name. Nicole, who are our new Feral fans?
Welcome, Stephanie, Joyful Brandy, Josie, Bree H, Becca, and Kat. Welcome.
Yay! Thank you so much for being part of this. And if friends, if you're like, hey, I want my name shouted out on the podcast and to be shouted with all this love too, join our fan club at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. Link is also in the show notes.
Thank you, as always, to our content researcher, Brooke, and our executive producer, aka our sanity manager, Hayden. We love you both.
We are very active on social media with weekly trivia, book guides, and so much more. So please be sure to follow us on Instagram and/or TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod. And if you're watching this on YouTube, pretty please hit that subscribe button to keep following along.
While you're hitting buttons, don't forget to hit that 5-star button on whatever podcasting platform you are listening on. And if you want to go above and beyond, write a little love note in that review section. And not just for this podcast, but for any podcast you listen to. It is so helpful. And last but not least, share this episode with your fellow fantasy fangirl fans. Fan friends. If you've been in the group text and you've been saying, hey, you need to check out this podcast, this is a great episode to send to them to be like, hey, listen, these are the girls I've been telling you about, and they're awesome. You should be friends with them.
That's us, yeah.
That was so aggressive.
Thank you again so much. We will see you next week for episode 1 of Quicksilver. Bye-bye.
Bye.